The Tails Dark Diary mod just recently updated, and I feel like I have to cover this mod because it is surprisingly dark and not a lot of people are aware of this story. Now, Tails Dark Diary was created by a YouTuber named Monguber, who made a full animated series titled Tails Dark Diary, of course. Now, in this series, we see that Tails is hiding a dark secret that he keeps in a diary. And even though he doesn't want anybody to read said diary, he still leaves the diary out in the open so that anybody can basically find it. And this is where we start to run into trouble. The first person to find this diary is Cream, and she is able to basically learn his dark secret. What we find out is basically that Tails is deeply in love with Sonic. And if we're really being honest, it seems to be more like he's obsessed with Sonic more so than in love with him. Now, Cream tells him that he should just burn his diary so that nobody else will find out his dark secret, because in actuality, Sonic will never actually love Tails the way that he loves him. Tails doesn't appreciate Cream's advice at all, and he responds in a way that kind of surprised me. He basically kills her and then buries her in Knuckles' garden. And now, since Cream is the youngest member in the Sonic crew, being only 6, people quickly notice that she is missing and they start to look for her, fearing that she may have gotten into some type of trouble. During the search, Amy throws herself into Sonic's arm, crying, and naturally Sonic holds Amy and tries to comfort her. And this is where we learn that Tails is actually very jealous of Amy, and kind of for good reason. If you look at the animation, it becomes very obvious that Amy isn't really even sad that Cream has disappeared, but instead she's just using this as an excuse to get closer to Sonic. She's kind of a scumbag. So knowing this, Tails does go and confront Amy, but it becomes obvious that Amy doesn't respect him at all. And after searching for Cream for a while, they finally call it a night, and Tails passes out right on the floor of his room. Now, while he's sleeping, apparently Amy snuck into his room and read his diary, which of course he left right on the floor again. And this is how Amy found out that Tails actually loves Sonic and the fact that he killed Cream to hide his secret. Now, at first, I thought that Amy was going to run and expose Tails to the rest of the crew, but she instead pulled a cleaver out so that she could 1v1 Tails to the death, proving that she is just as crazy as Tails, if not more. Now, when the fight first started, it seemed like Amy and Tails were pretty evenly matched, but as the match continued, we see that Amy actually overpowers Tails and stabs him a bunch of times. But her biggest mistake was that she doesn't go for like a head or a neck stab or anything like that. And as Amy is walking away gloating, Tails basically gets like a burst of energy. He gets up and he slits her throat. Now, while all this is happening, Knuckles ends up finding Cream's body in his garden and alerted Sonic. And once they were both able to take a good look at the body, they noticed that Cream had a piece of Tails' hair in her fist. With this new information, the pair decided to go see Tails so that they can ask him some questions about what happened here. But when the duo actually arrives at Tails' home, they notice that he isn't actually there, but they do find, of course, his diary laid out in the open again. And this is where Sonic starts to figure out that Tails is in love with him. Now, while Sonic is reading through all this intimate detail, Knuckles actually opens up one of the closets and Amy's head rolls out. But this isn't even the creepiest thing that happens. The head basically rolls and then it looks up at Sonic and says, "Kill him for our love." Being rightfully creeped out, Sonic and Knuckles run out of the house, and Knuckles wants to go to the police to report everything that has happened, which is the only sane thing that people have done so far. Sonic tries to get Knuckles to stay and help him find Tails, but Knuckles refuses, saying that they need to go to the police even if they have no evidence. And I'm sure many of you have already realized this, but the messed up part about this is that Sonic does have the evidence that they need, considering that he's literally holding the diary. And since Sonic didn't actually warn Knuckles, Knuckles just goes off to the police by himself, and he ends up running into Tails while heading to the police station. Of course, a confrontation happens, and it becomes obvious that Tails is the killer, and surprisingly, Knuckles seems to be afraid of him. And I said that this is a surprise because anybody who's familiar with Knuckles as a character knows that he is not scared of much. But in this animation, for some reason, Knuckles is on the ground basically pleading for Tails not to hurt him, and then suddenly Amy's dead body, which we assume was buried there by Tails just recently, comes up from the ground and stabs Knuckles in the throat. And while that was super random and unexpected, the next part is what actually really caught me off guard. After seeing all that, Tails starts to laugh, he looks at Knuckles' body, and then he starts to devour him. Now, while Tails is munching away, Sonic actually walks up behind him and sees everything. Tails tries to explain himself, but Sonic reveals that he's found the diary and knows all the sick stuff that Tails has done. Funny enough, we also learn that Sonic isn't even sad about the death of Amy or Cream. He's really only mad at the death of Knuckles, stating that Knuckles was his best friend. Sonic also says that Tails should give up on his twisted fantasy because the two of them can never be together. Of course, this triggers Tails to do something that really creeped me out. He says that he doesn't need his his manhood and literally slices it off and then eats it like it's a hot dog without the bun. For some reason, Tails thought that this act would make Sonic love him, but obviously it just freaked Sonic out even more. Tails, not being able to cope with the idea of not having Sonic in his life, decided to stab him in the stomach, and then he spends the entire night basically hugging Sonic's head after he removed it from his body. Now, there is a second part to the Tails Dark Diary series where a bunch of teenagers are out camping, and this seems to be a couple of years after the actual original story takes place. Now, while these kids are out camping, they basically start to tell scary stories, and of course, one of the stories is about a two-tailed fox that actually killed all his friends. But of course, the teens just dismiss it as an urban legend. One of the friends, though, did believe the actual story, and he goes back to his cabin and performs a ritual that will bring Amy back from the dead, which surprisingly he actually does succeed at after he sacrifices one of his little friends. But when Amy's spirit comes back, she actually kills that person, and then the spirit ends up possessing a character called Tykel, who then goes on to kill this little bumblebee character named Charmy. Next, we see that Tails has become like a cult leader slash mad scientist, basically sacrificing hedgehogs so that they can actually bring Sonic back to life. But since the FNF mod hasn't caught up to this part of the story, I'll wait until the update before I go into really big detail with this one. With that being said, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this video on the screen here. Subscribe today to become a member of the Orseofkorse, and we'll see you next time with another video. Peace.